Hey, what's up everybody? Eric here, and in this video we're going to be talking about the writer's strike. Now, a lot of people this week have been asking me, Eric, what do you know about it? Do you understand it? What's happening? How's it going to affect our shows? What does this all mean? And although we're still not sure exactly how this is all going to play out, we do have some information on what exactly the writers are looking for in Hollywood. I'm going to break down a lot of the demands over here, the bigger demands, and talk about how AI may be one of the biggest, one of the scariest things as a creative right now, working for Hollywood or working in TV, movies in general, even on independent projects, how that could affect those things. So if you want to know all about that, stick through this video. We're going to go over all of this. And if you're enjoying my content, please hit subscribe and become part of my channel here and leave a comment down below. All right, this is from AP News, and it says, what do striking Hollywood writers want? A look at the demands. Now, I thought this article did a great breakdown and gave some quick, concise information. We're going to go through it. We're going to read what they have to say. I'm going to give you guys my thoughts on it and where I think we're going to end up at the end of all this. All right, increased pay. This is the first one we're going to talk about here. It says the Guild is seeking higher compensation for writers across the board. So they're looking for more money for the amount of work they're doing. I don't see any issue with that at all. It says 10 years ago, 33% of TV writers were paid the minimum rate. Now, according to the WGA, 49% are. It's an increase. Accounting for inflation, the writer's pay has declined 14% in the last 5 years. The median weekly writer-producer pay is down 23% over the last decade with inflation factored in. So I know those are a lot of numbers. But basically, they're already underpaid based on where they should be on market value. Okay, so they're already not getting paid what they should, the fair rate. Their negotiations are saying that, look, we're not only down in overall pay percentages, but the pay is down 23% over the last decade with inflation. And then this part here, writers say many of their members aren't even making a living wage. Now, this has been a huge talking point in the United States. If you don't live in this country, you may not have heard this, but it is a big talking point right now. Most places, even where I live here, at the beach and stuff, most people are struggling to pay rent. They're struggling to do anything in this country. It is hard, and it may be hard where you are too. But I'm talking about not even, if you are a single person, not even being able to afford a one-bedroom apartment. The cheapest one-bedroom apartments are too expensive to do. So you end up having to have a roommate in a one-bedroom apartment, and that's kind of the norm for a lot of people now. And you could argue, what is a living wage? It could be different for everybody. Do you think your living wage is $150,000 a year? But if the market says a living wage is $40,000 a year, then that's what the living wage is, even if you believe it's more. So it's a problem. It's a problem, right? I don't think there's any issue with this. They're negotiating pay. I think this makes sense. And this is usually the big sticking point for why strikes are happening. All right, here's the next one. Better residuals, all right? It says here, for more than half a century, residuals have been a foundation way for writers to make money. And residuals are basically like when you make a product for a company and you receive a check when that product gets used in another market or gets used on a different TV network, or anytime that product is used somewhere else, you get a residual from it. And this isn't just writers. Anybody who worked on these usually factors in residuals, because I talked about this before when we've discussed films when it comes to big actors versus gig workers or, working class people in film. Typically, anybody other than the main star, which they could do residuals as well, but anybody other than the main star factors in residuals as a thing they get for working on a project, because art is very undervalued. So you work on something and you're like, okay, I'll take $50 up front and then 1% of the overall sales outside of these territories. It doesn't end up being a lot of money. But if you do a lot of work, like different things, those small payments matter, okay? That's what a residual is. It says, but streaming has upended these payouts. Writers used to be handsomely compensated anytime their work went into syndication or was sold for overseas territories. See, this was a consequence of streaming that I didn't even think about. So places like Netflix or Max or Disney Plus, any of these big, huge streamers, they are international, which is great for consumers because we all get a chance to subscribe to the service and get that content for the stuff that we love to watch, right? That's great for consumers. But that means that, say, for example, if Stranger Things was a show that only came out in the United States, they would have to find a distribution platform in Australia, Europe, somewhere else in the world, Canada. They'd have to find an alternate distribution platform for that show. But because it is an international streaming service, that no longer exists, which means that those residual payments never happen. They get paid up front for Stranger Things and then nothing else after that, or very little after that. This is really important here. Streaming services also generally don't share viewership data with filmmakers and writers, meaning writers don't know how valuable their work has been. To replace back-end residuals, the WGA is seeking more upfront fees. That makes total sense to me. I do not see an issue with that whatsoever. If these CEOs and these corporations are going to save a ton of money by not having to pay residuals, then they should pay more money up front. It only makes sense. Again, not an unreasonable request. Staffing requirements. Here it says the union wants TV shows to staff a certain amount of writers for a period of time. Now, if you're not too familiar with this, there's these things called writers' rooms. And that's for all the shows typically have them, or they have had them in the past. We have a group of writers that write the entire series. They sit around and they come up with the storylines and they make those storylines happen with the showrunner. And that's how the writing process works. They're called writers' rooms. It says here, at issue is the rising practice of many rooms where only a handful of writers are working on a series. So reduced amount of writers putting out the same or more the amount of work as you would get from a regular sized writer's room. So this seems to be an issue, like overworked people that are underpaid. It says such writers' rooms are often employed during development before a show is greenlit. This means writers can be working on a series that doesn't get picked up for as much as a year after they worked on it or not at all. So that's a problem. It's a problem if the smaller writers' rooms are doing this and they're being overworked because they don't want to staff enough people. And here's the next statement here. This is a very important part. The process has circumvented some of the protections WGA members have from being overworked and understaffed. Bingo. The use of many rooms accelerated during the pandemic, with writers often meeting by Zoom, a still commonplace practice. I don't see an issue with Zoom meetings. I think Zoom meetings are fine. But if the corporations and the CEOs of these companies are using that as an excuse to keep smaller writing rooms, that is a problem. Because it should be used as a tool to help writers, not to underpay them and understaff the writers' rooms. Not an unreasonable request. All right. Shorter exclusivity deals. So here it says many of the rules around TV writing are also still based on now increasingly outdated model. Writers might have once expected to spend almost a year working on a 22 to 25 episode season of broadcast TV. Do you remember the golden era? You remember when we used to get like 23, 24 episodes of a show? We used to spend, half a year watching our favorite shows every single week. You remember that? I remember that. It says here, now the average season is much shorter. Popular shows like Bridgerton might only have 8 episodes. Not only does that diminish writers' pay per episode pay, but it can limit them from working on other programs if they're tied to longer terms of exclusivity. Okay, I'm not going to assume all productions are like this, but what that sounds like to me is you sign on to do a TV show, you get 5 months exclusivity to that show. The show films and wraps up in 4 months. You're left with a month where you can't do any work because you're exclusively tied to the show. Yeah, that's bad. That's a bad thing. And I think this is the last one here, which is the assurances on AI. Now, we talked about this a little bit on live streams. You guys should definitely stop in live streams on Twitch, www.twitch.tv/EricsReloaded, where we talk about all kinds of stuff like this. All right, AI here. Writers are also increasingly concerned that producers will use artificial intelligence to write scripts or at least fill in the blanks on unfinished screenplays. They're concerned about it. More on that in a second. But it says this fast advancing technology has potentially widespread ramifications for Hollywood and in some cases may be a useful tool, but the WGA wants to protect companies production companies to agree to safeguards around its uses. I agree. I've been saying this for a while. AI, and I'm going to explain to you why it's not actually AI in a second, but AI should not replace creatives. It should be a tool for creatives, right? Like you don't have a paintbrush replace a painter. You don't have a typewriter replace a writer. So why are you having AI replace creatives? Because it's cheaper. Again, all this wraps back around to the fact that creative people are undervalued. They're undervalued. What we do is considered to be not important because non-creative people don't see the value in creative people, or they're jealous of creative people. Like a lot of the people that run these companies are not creative, and they make 5 times as much money as the people that are creative that work for them. That's the world we live in. So this AI assurance, why do I think AI is not AI? I think AI is a plagiarism bot. I think AI is basically a plagiarism bot. It takes things that other people who are actually creative have made, and then it puts them into a blender waiting for someone to ask for something. So they can go on the computer and type in Superman versus Batman as Green Lanterns. And then that bot, plagiarism bot goes through and goes, okay, Green Lantern, Superman, Batman, which person drew these characters? Jim Lee, Brian Hitch, I don't know, Todd McFarlane. And then it just kind of makes that from those things. That is not AI. That's not artificial intelligence. It is a precursor to what artificial intelligence is, but it's not actually artificial intelligence. It is taking a bunch of stuff and smushing it together. Even if it does it beautifully and it makes it look fantastic, it is still plagiarizing people's work. Writers, it's even worse because AI, when it comes to art, isn't quite there yet. But AI, when it comes to writing generic emails and things like that, it does good enough. So writers are at a higher risk right now. And you think this isn't happening. You say, Eric, it's not happening. Well, guess what? The AI revolution has already reached the studio's gates. Disney's Bob Iger may be the only CEO who can stop it. This is just from today. This is literally today. It says here, for weeks, multiple studios and streamers have been planning to use AI to generate scripts based on books and other IP that is in the public domain, with lists of titles making the rounds among development executives. All right, there we go. Already. This is part of the reason why we should be supporting the writers. Now, the thing about this article is, as we go through it, there's some stuff that I don't agree with, and I'll tell you when I get there. All right, it says here, I'm reliably told that nearly every studio has already explored the possibility, and that should some of these plans come to fruition over the weeks and likely months to come, the studio plans to hire writers to rewrite the scripts once the writer's strike is over. That is, of course, a major sticking point in the negotiations, as the WGA has insisted that AI not be used to create any literary material whatsoever. That seems like it's like, oh, how dare they? How dare they? But let's go back to what's happening here. AI plagiarizes writers' material. Full stop. And the reason why they can get away with it right now is there's no real laws or restrictions on AI. The governments and the restrictions within Hollywood and corporations or whatever has not caught up with the speed that AI has moved at. So AI is moving beyond the spectrum of actual restrictions. But it's literally plagiarizing people. That's what it does. It is not creating the stuff on its own. We have to remember that. So when it writes a script, it is not writing a script from scratch. It is writing something based on other writers' materials. And since it is an AI and it is blending things up, there's no way to sue anybody. There's no way to sue anybody because it's not a person. This is worst case scenario for creatives and writers in Hollywood. Worst case scenario. So the reason why they're saying this is that AI can be used to supplement the writing process, but should not be used to replace the writing process. This seems like just basic stuff, right? Here we go. Now, I agree with the first part here in the pink. It says, folks on the studio side suggest that writers should not fear AI, but rather embrace it, as the usage is inevitable for those who can believe it could be a wonderful tool for both writing and filmmaking. Okay. I think fear and embrace are two very polarized sides of the argument. I think that people who are in the creative space should absolutely be concerned about AI, but I don't think they should just blindly embrace AI either, because who's going to get paid for that? No one. No one's going to get paid for that. It's literally saying, hey, I'm going to lose my job. Awesome. That doesn't make any sense. And that's, again, this is corporate speak, right? But being used as a tool, as a supplemental tool where a writer could say, hey, I need to fill in things within a script. I don't see an issue with that. But I think replacing someone with a AI that's, or a plagiarizing bot, to me, is wrong. Then it goes on, the fear surrounding AI is certainly understandable, as it with any technology that is always considered disruptive. To its supporters, though, it's all about how you use it. Studios can use AI to replace writers or help them improve their work. That's the issue there. There needs to be safeguards in place so that these writers know that the studios will not simply replace them for a completely cost zero plagiarism bot. That's what they need to understand. And then here it says, let's face it, there is room for improvement these days, but that room for improvement doesn't require them to cut out writers altogether. That's not the solution. And somebody who doesn't respect creatives would make a statement like that, all right? And here we go. Last part of this is, on the other hand, you've got folks like Jeffrey Hinton, the so-called godfather of AI, who just left his job as Google so he could more freely speak about the dangers of the technology he helped create. He's not the only one who has been sounding the alarm bells, and indeed, critics of AI warn of a Terminator-like future where Skynet is in charge. I think that's, I mean, it could happen. I'm not going to say it couldn't, but I think that's a long-term effect that we, like, what we need to be worrying about right now is jobs, like how AI is going to affect jobs, because that's really the sector where it is affecting people. We're seeing like fully automated McDonald's out there where there's like one person working in the kitchen and one manager in the store, and the staff has been completely replaced with robots. We're losing like the low paying jobs, right? So they're like people coming out, like trying to get jobs after high school or to work through college or whatever. Some people who want to do long terms in that field, they can't do it. They can't do it because companies are just replacing them with robots, and it's happening at an alarming rate. Now, it is inevitable that some jobs will be replaced with technology, but the problem is there needs to be some sort of like line in the sand where you go, we're not going to go this far. We're not going to go this far. And I think literally replacing people who are making art with robots that are plagiarizing art is not it's a unconscionable thing to do. And it should not be unreasonable to respect the creatives to go, hey, we're not going to replace you with something that's just going to steal your work. At least we're not going to do that, at the very least. Anyway, that's pretty much it. I wanted to sort of just touch on all of this and fill all you guys in on what was going on. You said you didn't understand how this is going to affect everything. Really, when it comes down to show renewals and things like that, it's all really depends on how long this writer's strike goes for. I can tell you right now, with Hollywood sort of on a rebound, the last thing they want is this writer's strike to go on for a really long time. So they're going to have to reach some agreements on some of these talking points. And I think all of them are valid. Let's see how far Hollywood is willing to extend and how much consideration the Writers Guild is going to give to any of these compensations. So we'll see. That's pretty much it. Make sure you leave your comments and thoughts down below in the comment section. Give me a like if you enjoyed this video, and subscribe to the channel if you would like to see more content with me. All right, that's it. Take care.